Now we're going to learn all about food sensitivities and allergies. With the rise in people experiencing digestive issues, it's important to understand and be able to differentiate between these two conditions. Now, a food sensitivity typically is something that's associated with a longer reaction time. So this is why it can be so hard to determine, because it could be anywhere from 12 hours up until 3 days after a food is ingested where you might experience some symptoms. And again, when we're talking about the gut, the symptoms may not stem and be gut-related symptoms. They may be more brain-related symptoms. So this is where food and tracking really becomes important to understand what you may be consuming on a regular basis and why is that causing a reaction in you. Now, a food allergy, this is something immediate. So this is an IgE response, whereas a food sensitivity is an IgG response. And what does IgG mean? It means immunoglobulins. Now there is 5 different immunoglobulin classes. We've gone over IgG, which is the most abundant antibody when it comes to immunoglobulin classes in the body. This is found primarily in blood and lymph. IgE is what we talked about when it comes to a food allergy. The other immunoglobulin classes are IgA, IgM, and IgD. Immunoglobulins are also something called glycoproteins. So essentially, that is a protein that has a carb attached to it. Now, glycoproteins, aka immunoglobulins, have a very important role in our system. They help to identify any foreign invaders that may want to disrupt our homeostasis, and they will help keep us well. Now, mainly if you are going to have an allergy, this is where you're going to go to your doctor and you're going to get tested. Hopefully you'll identify your food allergy before you have an occurrence or a life-threatening situation that prompts you to look at the foods you're eating. A lot of the common allergies that we see nowadays are related to shellfish and peanuts. It's also important to note that they are Y-shaped molecules made from white blood cells. Now, when it comes to symptoms to look out for, when it comes to a food sensitivity, there are numerous symptoms. So again, some of them can be digestive-based and some of them are going to be brain-based. So some of the more digestive-based symptoms would be gas, bloating, and I'm talking very uncomfortable bloating, irregular bowel movements, bad bowel movements in terms of too loose, or on the flip side, constipation. They also may show up something we've talked about before, as brain fog, inability to have a good memory recall, and also inability to control moods. So if you find yourself getting into mood swings quite frequently, it's always nice to look back and check out the foods that you're eating. Not only can symptoms be related to your digestive system and your brain, they can also show up topically. So look for any differences in your skin. Are you getting little rashes? Are you getting dry skin? Basically, are you getting anything different? Anything that's not normal for you, anything that's changed. It's always good to measure yourself against yourself. Now, some of the symptoms when it comes to an allergic response, they can also seem like symptoms related to a food sensitivity. However, typically they can also be much more severe. Think about an anaphylactic reaction. It's your ability to breathe. So if you notice any tingling, any wheezing, any swelling in the throat, this prompts you to go to the ER right away. Again, sensitivities, we have a little bit of time, we can manage these. Food allergies, these are sensitive, these are severe, and will require immediate medical attention. In terms of determining whether you have a food allergy or a sensitivity, it really is going to influence who on your health team you see next. If you suspect a food allergy, you're going to go want to see your MD, a medical doctor. They might do some skin prick tests, and they will probably also do some blood tests. Not only that, but they will also look at your family history to see if anybody else in your family also has food allergies. When it comes to food sensitivities, you will probably want to go and see your naturopathic doctor. They can do an IgG blood test, and they can test anywhere from 50 to over 200 foods, as well as food substances and additives to determine if you have a sensitivity to anything. If blood tests really aren't your thing, don't worry. When it comes to sensitivity, you can also do something called an elimination diet. Now, depending on the number of foods on your suspect food list, this could take some time. However, it's all up to you. Now, essentially what you'd want to do is you'd want to think of what foods you feel are causing you to have a reaction. A lot of the top ones are wheat, are gluten, dairy, eggs, soy, citrus, strawberry, and red meat. However, that list is not exhaustive. It can be something obscure that may be causing you a reaction, and then you want to do that for the elimination diet. Basically, you want to do one thing at a time. You don't want to do a lot at once, because if you start to feel better and you've removed multiple food items, it's going to be really hard to determine and distinguish which food item that was. So start with one, eliminate it for at least 10 to 14 days. Really get it out of your system, out of your diet, really start fresh. Now, after that 10 or 14 day window, you're going to want to slowly introduce that food back in. Look for quality and quantity. You want a small amount and a high quality amount. Now, this is where you're going to gauge your symptoms. Now, when it comes to symptoms, you want to track things in 3 ways very well. You want to track intensity, duration, and severity. That way, you can make note of symptoms, and they might just change ever so smallly, but that is the information and the data that you want to use to understand what foods are causing a reaction in you. Once you've done your first food, feel free to continue the elimination diet for as many foods as you want. This can also be done in conjunction with a naturopathic doctor as well as a holistic nutritionist. The other positive upside to having a food sensitivity as opposed to a food allergy is that if you completely eliminate that food, get on a gut health protocol, you may be able to introduce that food back into your diet. Now again, start small. Have a small amount of a high quality food and wait. How are your bowel movements? How's your mood? How's your skin? How's your brain functioning? If all of these are working really well, then way to go, awesome. You can then include that food back into your diet in small amounts. Now you may be wondering, how on earth do so many people now have either food sensitivities or allergies? Your grandparents never had anything. Well, this could come down to a few different factors. A, we're now collecting data much more efficiently than we ever have in the past. And we've got tools and tests that weren't available. Not only that, the food that we're consuming today is a lot different than the food that our grandparents and our great-great-grandparents consumed. We have a lot of chemicals, we have a lot of additives, some natural, some chemical. And it's not necessarily that a single consumption of these foods is going to create a sensitivity. However, it's this accumulation over a lifetime that may get you to a point where all of a sudden you have a food sensitivity. For example, you may be able to have dairy, and all of a sudden you hit an age where all of a sudden, boom, you can't have dairy anymore. I think of that as you reaching your toxic load. Some people reach their toxic load early on in life, so they identify their food sensitivities young. Some people may not hit their toxic load when it comes to a food until much later on in life. And it could be brought on by other factors in that person's life. Are they just healing from a surgery? Are they under a lot of stress? Then all of a sudden the food sensitivity comes up. It may be a link that has become weaker because of all the other factors affecting that person's body system at that time.